Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today we are going to be working on starting cuttings for dahlias, and we're going to be doing the same kind of idea with the sweet potatoes. So let's take a look at these things as we pull them out of storage, and we'll walk you through our process. Okay, this is a crate of sweet potatoes. These were kind of the small guys, or maybe the ones that we could have eaten, but we just didn't. And it's a mixed bag of varieties. I don't know if you remember from last spring, we had like 3 or 4 different varieties of sweet potatoes, including the most productive one when we got into harvest was the one that we started 2 years ago from a simple grocery store sweet potato, and it was a white flesh sweet potato, and it's actually done pretty well. What we've noticed is that one also tends to store the best too. We had a lot of issues with small things like this where they basically kind of shriveled up, these varieties. This was, I think, a remnant of a Georgia Jet. And I've got the same thing with like this guy. It kind of dehydrated on us. Probably not going to sprout. What I'm looking for to make good sweet potato plants or cuttings, slips, is a tuber that's firm, not necessarily, it doesn't have any rot on it, might have a dried end, that's okay, and it's definitely got small eyes on it, so we can use that. So like this type is perfect, and it looks to me like what I'm going to end up with is the majority of the starts that I'm going to do for this year aren't going to be the ones we bought. They just didn't store that well. And frankly, for the future, I don't think I want to have sweet potatoes that don't store very well. I really want something that produces good tubers, has a good flavor, good texture, and stores well. And the various varieties that we purchased, we had a Georgia Jet, and we had a Vardaman, and then we had our own variety that we saved from the grocery store. And just about every case, the one from the grocery store, tends to be, this is a little odd shape, but it's firm. It has no rot. And so these are, I think, that's all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start, just keep going forward with the varieties that we started with, the free one. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I need to pick out probably is a mini that, at least to this size, so they got some stored energy into them to, get a couple of good trays of these guys. And I could probably put about 6 to 8 of these guys in a 10 inch by 20 inch tray. And they'll put potting mix over the top of those. And this will be what we'll use for our slips. So that's just a matter of going through. I mean, here's a Vardaman. This one looks okay, but it's still got a little softness at the top and a rot. So I just don't think I want to use these guys at all. I'm just going to stick with one variety. This one is not going to be useful. It's way too odd. But, we've got a lot of these guys, that are they're a little dry, but they're still really firm. So that's what we're going to use. Okay, after sorting, what we got is about 30 of what we call the white fleshed ones. I got a couple, it looks like Vardamans that might have slipped in, but most of these guys are the white fleshed one we got from the supermarket 3 years ago. And I couldn't resist. I got to take a couple. I cut off some of the bad spots off a couple Georgia Jets just to still kind of have some orange fleshed sweet potatoes. I'll know the difference soon because the leaf structure of both these guys is radically different. So one of them's kind of more like an oak type style leaf, and the other is a traditional kind of like oval shaped, if that's a better term for it. For lack of a better term, I should say, leaf. But this should be enough to do at least 3 trays to get them pre-sprout. So I'll just show you how we pack up a tray just to get it started up here. Okay, this setup is really pretty simple. What we got is we have a kind of a solid tray with a weave bottom on it, but this is a really rigid tray. It's kind of helped this other one that is got a, this is like the typical tray we use for putting our mini soil blocks in. In order to keep the mix from falling out of the bottom, I'm just putting a couple pieces of newspaper, old newspaper in the bottom. And then what we do is we'll take this basic, this is the potting mix. And what I want to do is put about enough to cover, maybe a 1/2 inch at the bottom. The depth of this tray is probably a little over 2 inches. And so what we're going to do is just have enough mix in it to kind of get it to lay flat. And that's basically it. And then we take the tubers themselves and we just lay them into the mix. They can be fairly close together, but what I want to do is like this one's kind of an odd shape. Oops, got a little worm in there. We don't need him. It's really kind of a simple methodology. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll put maybe 12 in here. And it's just enough to basically cover the tray. And each one of these guys will probably make, at least a dozen slips by the time they're finished. And then we just cover them back up. Now, what's going to be covered on the top here is these guys are only going to have maybe, 1/8 of an inch over the top of them. So when the eyes of these sweet potatoes sprout, they'll go right through this. And the idea is I want to be able to, when I cut the slips, cut them as close as possible to the actual tuber itself. And that way, you might even have a root on them when we cut them. But that's it. So I'll just do both of these guys. I'll probably get 2.5 trays out of this. So I should have plenty of sweet potatoes for this next year. Okay, we've got 2 varieties of dahlias here that we didn't really get that many tubers on them. And what we want to do is we want to kind of increase the amount. This version is called iced tea. And we definitely can see that there are eyes right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take as many of these guys that we pulled out of storage. Some of them dried a little bit, but they're still actually in pretty good shape. And we're going to do iced tea, and then we've got another variety called Dark Spirit, which is kind of the same thing. Although some of these guys, it looks like Dark Spirit didn't store quite as well, but I still think we'll get enough of them to sprout up. So it's the same idea as we do for the sweet potatoes. We take our potting mix and just kind of coat the bottom of a tray. Excuse my neighbor, he's running a shredder today, so sometimes things get a little noisy. So what I'm looking for is looking for this guy's right here. There'd be quite a few eyes in it, and it should sprout. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tear this apart. Actually, I'll cut it. Okay, so it's really kind of easy. I just look for where there is a gap, and I'll just cut from the inside. And there's a little bit of a scar there, but that won't be that big of a deal. I still got nice eyes there. I'll take these spare little things off. And this one right here is kind of dehydrated, so I'll just clip this off. I guess my shears aren't as tough as they should be. So we got eyes on this one, so that should be fine. That one's garbage, not going to worry about it. It's kind of got the same thing going here. We got a nice clump. I think I can just tease that one apart. So I got eyes right there. All I need is one good set of eyes on each one. And so when you look at it, you start to look at it, you can see like there's eyes right here. And that's what will give us another set of plants. There's great eyes on this one right here. You can see the little knobs. And so we're gonna, I think, be able to get a pretty good set here. This one doesn't have anything on it, so I'm not going to worry about it. That one's pretty good. Lots of good ones on this one. And one last one here and here. So that's the idea, is we're going to give these guys some space. So I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I'm going to go for a 10th one. See if I can fit these guys in. So the idea is when these are finished, I could actually plant these guys too in the field and see, you know, if they'll be you know, viable enough. But these 10, if I do this right, should give us at least 4 to 5 good cuttings off of them, which hopefully most of them will root. And really also I'm looking for is to get 20 good plants. So I should be able to get double of that, and we'll see how that goes. But that's it. It's basically the same technique. Then we cover it just like we did the sweet potatoes. In this case, it'll have about a 1/2 inch or so over the top. And that is about all we'll need to do. Make sure I got enough material in here. This potting mix has some worm castings in it too, probably about 3 to 4%. So that'll help with a little biology. And it's a very simple potting mix. It's the same one we use. It's got perlite in it. It's got some vermiculite in it. So it's got enough stuff to breathe. And then what I'll do is put one of my labels on here so I know who it is. It's iced tea. And then just do the same thing with the dark spirit. And these guys should, after we wet them down, we just need to keep them damp, and we'll keep them on a heating mat at about 68 degrees. And these should sprout really in a couple 3 weeks tops. You don't want to keep them too wet, and it's the same thing with the sweet potatoes. You just want to get it damp enough that it's moist, but there's still air in the mix, and keep them in a warm temperature. And as soon as they sprout, then we'll move these trays to an area where they can get some light, so what does come off them is not leggy and grows a nice compact cutting. And that's it. So it's about 2 inches deep, 10 inches wide, and 20 inches long, and I'll get at least 10 plants in here to give us sprouts. So this is the last step. We wetted it down, and we just have to keep these guys moist and keep them on a heat mat. And this goes the same for sweet potatoes, the same as dahlias. And the beauty about this is you can take these roots now and you can make many, many more plants. So this is, sweet potatoes are going to be about the same thing. We'll probably have enough slips to put in the ground in, near the end of May, early part of June. So depending on how the temperatures go, we may either pot them up to grow them a little longer before we stick them in the ground, or we may just plant them direct. So that's it, folks. There isn't much to it to, really be able to multiply your dahlias, as well as, getting your sweet potatoes started. It's all the same process. So particularly with dahlias, I know that there's a lot of folks that are having trouble getting dahlia tubers this year. So think about if you can get just a few tubers of some variety that's hard to get, you could use this technique to really bump up your stock without having to, you know, feel that you missed out because supply chain issues or whatever. You know, it was just too hard to get. So this is a kind of an easy way to do it, and it works really well. And like I said, with dahlias, if you start them early enough using this process and get them into the field really pretty much at the same time that you would normally plant a tuber, they will grow to the same size plant, and they will also produce tubers in the fall. So it's kind of a no-brainer if you really want to expand your stock and you're kind of, you know, you can't buy the tuber itself. You could spend a little bit of more time and a little bit of space in your greenhouse and make it happen. So anyway, thanks for joining us today, and as always, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.